This is a plant called Jewel of Opar. It's kind of looking rough because we had these 2 little freezes in the last couple months or so. But it seems to come back every year. I think it's a USDA Zone 9A plant. So even if it dies down all the way to the ground, hopefully it'll come back from the roots. It'll have these little teeny like pink flowers, has a little tiny stem that comes up, and then, you know, like a cluster or whatever, flowers on top. So they're popular as a house plant, but these are also popular apparently as an edible that tastes similar to spinach. So they supposedly like it more sandy and dry, but they seem to grow okay, at least in containers, even when it floods here. So this might be a plant for our wetlands permaculture area if we get a big enough mound and get some sand and stuff, and just have a, you know, a layer of these plants, you know, 10 or 20 or whatever, just to add more diversity to the permaculture garden. This is a sumac, which I've been trying to get for a while. I think it's smooth sumac, lemonade berry, whatever you want to call it. I actually got this in a different county in like really sandy soil. I got permission from the owners. I think I took 2, and when I went to dig it up or whatever, I found out that there was a single tree on like root runners, so root suckers. I haven't seen any life from the other one I got, and I kind of doubted this one would even root, but it looks like at least one of them took. White wild
These are white mulberries.
And you can eat them a little bit darker when they start turning a little bit more brown. I talked the other day in the video about possibly removing this white elderberry.
White mulberry. I don't know why I keep calling it elderberry.
But what I didn't mention is that people commonly keep these to attract, you know, birds and squirrels and stuff to this fruit, and hopefully away from other, you know, better fruits, you know. So that's a potential reason to keep something like this. That's definitely an argument, and birds flock this, you know. Sometimes they get everything before people get them. Other times you'll have, you know, a couple weeks or whatever of eating them, and then some type of bird species comes in here and just wipes them out in like 2 or 3 days. Just finishes them. We're back at our dwarf ever-bearing mulberry tree, and there's mosquitoes around here. So kind of swiping at the camera. Full of really good fruits. I don't know if we got a good focus on them because it's so shady in here. But let me just pick a few of them and maybe get it in the clear. Get some sunlight here to allow it to focus better. There we go. Them are like blackberries. And when I say blackberries, I mean not our native blackberries here that are earthy and sweet and have no flavor and got really hard seeds, but like dewberries or even grocery store blackberries that have a little bit of flavor and acidity to them. Really good. Kind of sour. Should be perfect for jams and stuff, preserves. So I often have wondered why you look at permaculture gardens and you see these little sticks that are just whacked down, including like mulberries and other fruit trees. Mulberries are extremely hard to get to when they're 18 or 20 foot or 35 foot high. So the reason, there's probably multiple reasons. One of the reasons is you want to be able to harvest your mulberries. You know, unlike the white mulberries that are not very good, the wild ones, you want them to grow, you want them to kind of bring the wildlife to those things away from your good mulberries or good other fruits. So people chop these down every year to about knee high, and I guess they're resilient, especially the dwarf everbearing like this one. And so all the kids can just get them from the ground, eat them from the ground. You can grab them, harvest them, put them in the freezer, whatever you want to do, dry them. I mean, although I'm assuming that these are so small that if you dry them, they'll shrivel up to about nothing. But yeah, freeze them for your pies and stuff, and put them fresh in your smoothies. And so the other reason you might want to keep them short, especially if you cannot harvest them 20 foot in the air, is to allow sunlight to go, around the tree, more sunlight. So you have smaller shrubs, smaller trees, or whatever, or trailing and ground covers and stuff that you can grow that are also edible. So you're allowing the sunlight, and you're allowing a certain amount of shade, to grow whatever you want around the tree. So permaculture usually is a tightly packed arrangement of growing stuff, whether it's medicinal, whether it's for your chickens and wildlife and turkeys and goats and rabbits, or or if it has some other properties. Like even dog fennels used like an insect repellent. American beautyberries, insect repellent, and it's edible, and it has, brings in, I guess, some pollinators, and, I'm sure a lot of birds and stuff feed them. So that has multiple uses, which is a reason you might use American beautyberry versus dog fennel if you had the choice. But that's, yeah, so you often wonder when you look at other people's permaculture gardens on YouTube or whatever, and you're like, they can't get a bountiful harvest from a little stick or something that has so many things growing around them. And that's probably true. I mean, a 20 or 35 foot mulberry is probably going to produce 100 times more fruit than one that is, 6 or 8 foot tall. But per square footage of your land, you're providing more edibles, medicinals, livestock food, and stuff for the square foot of your land. And I guess a lot of people started this permaculture, food forest thing because of limited space. How many things can I grow in a limited space? And we were watching a YouTube video yesterday, and the guy said, there's no clear and concise rules about permaculture. So you might look at 50 different videos, and you might have 20 different ideas, on how to do it, and what the primary purpose is. One of them, it seemed like the purpose was to get honey and raise their chickens and sheep, probably for food. And so they created this garden that probably didn't have a lot of edible stuff for humans, but it fed the bees, it fed the chickens, it fed the livestock, so that they can eat the livestock and get the honey and stuff like that. So the tires and barrels that I planted the pawpaw seeds in, so far I have nothing, but just like everything else, you find different information, regarding, how long something takes. What they agree on is the cold stratification, in the southern parts here, where outside temperatures do not stay, cold consistently for 70 or 100 days or 120 days or whatever. So when you cold stratify something in a refrigerator, you mark the date you put it in, and you say plant after this date, That's what I did. And now I'm reading in another source that says between June and August, after you plant these in the spring, after the cold stratification, they should pop up. We'll see, because other people that have tried in the area, at least one person that seems to be pretty knowledgeable about growing stuff, avocados and pomelos and everything in the area, says he has not had any successes doing seedlings, like getting seedlings to actually sprout, or moving root suckers. So, and I knew going in this thing that root suckers were very hard to, put in a container or anything. And I do have one I moved. It still has green on it. I don't know if it's going to survive or just slowly wither away and die. But seeds, this is going to be the way to get and breed pawpaws for this area, and try to get greater quality fruits and trees that will consistently bloom. So if we can't figure out the seed thing, then we're going to be in trouble. But then again, we only had a few seeds to start this year, so hopefully next year we'll have, a lot more. So this is a pear. I want to say this is either an Asian pear or a hybrid. And it may have bloomed a few times, but really don't have another one close by to pollinate it if it needs pollinating. We've had bad luck with goats destroying stuff, and you can see where they girdled the trunk quite a bit before we got rid of them. But it's pretty tall. It's probably 15 to 17, 18 foot tall. And thing is, when I did my Baldwin pear, which is a soft pear somewhere else, it took at least 8 years before it started blooming and producing fruit. So if you want to get fruit fast, get peaches and stuff like that, which may fruit within the first year, 2 years. Of course, they're shorter lived, but the pears, in my experience, have been like 8 years plus to actually, once you put them in the ground, to start blooming. Even if they're blooming in a container, they already got the roots kind of bound to that container. So when you put them in the ground, they go to root growth mode, and then they start shooting up, growth mode. And then it could be a long time. I've probably talked about it in my banana video and maybe other videos. It's hard to see, but there is a raised bed here that, experimented with bananas in these containers and, barrels and stuff in the past. But, and I'm going to just check and make sure there are no like banana pups left over this year. And we may actually revitalize this and remake this container. We got pot and soil or compost or whatever in here already. Just clean all this up, and I'm thinking of possibly asparagus here, putting it down there. So that might be a fun little adventure. But asparagus crowns are pretty expensive, it's to get. And we know that being this far south, you get half production or less, and then the crowns only live about half the lifetime versus up north. And I've seen people grow it in Texas where it's not supposed to be that great either. And so people do get edible harvests, just not as much. So people may say, what's the difference between a blackberry and a dewberry? Blackberry, wild blackberry here, it's pretty much upright or semi-upright. They can grow, kind of viney sometimes, and if they're touching a fence or touching other plants around them, they'll kind of weave and vine out a little bit. But in the right growing circumstances, they'll grow somewhat straight up, and they'll grow with dewberries. Like this is dewberry here, and there's some. Let me see if I can zoom in. There's some unripe dewberry. More blackberries, and so they kind of grow together, at least here. And sometimes the blackberries actually bloom a couple weeks later than the dewberries do. The blackberries, as I say multiple times, are sweet, earthy, have kind of hard seeds in them. They don't make good jams, in my opinion, or anything. A lot of people will use the dewberry and the young blackberry leaves to put in their herbal teas and stuff. And a lot of times the dewberries will have a good purple tinge to the leaves and stuff. Let's see, like this. There's kind of a reddish hue to them a lot of times. some growing in more sun. I mean, there's definitely some red and purple to the vine, and they're pretty much strictly vining. You know, they're not, if they're growing straight up, they're probably vining up, you know, another weed or something. So here's some more dewberries.